Breaking tonight, the major military escalation. The largest aircraft carrier in the U.S. Navy ordered to move towards South America as President Trump ramps up pressure on Venezuela. The Ford carrier deployed to the Caribbean, the massive display of firepower, including thousands of troops and dozens of aircrafts. Video shows the latest strikes on the alleged drug traffickers in the region. So what is President Trump's endgame as the military closes in? Also tonight, the catastrophic hurricane threat. Jamaica now bracing for a direct hit as Tropical Storm Melissa is set to explode into a major hurricane that could sit there for days. Our Bill Cairns with the latest track. Paychecks issued for $0. The desperation setting in for federal workers amid a shutdown with no end in sight. We visit a food bank filled with families struggling to put food on the table. The terrifying scene on New York's Brooklyn Bridge, a car engulfed in flames, sending smoke across the city skyline, and the new video capturing a bus falling off a hydraulic lift and suddenly exploding. Chaos outside of a Coast Guard base, law enforcement opening fire at a U-Haul truck driving erratically, reversing towards officers. What happened here? Tesla recalling nearly all of its Cybertrucks for lights that are too bright. Our Vicky Wynn gets an up-close look at what's behind the blinding glare. And Sophia comes home, a student shot during that Catholic school shooting, released from the hospital just in time for her 13th birthday. Her recovery against all odds. Plus the new warning from the NFL to its own players in light of that sprawling investigation into several NBA players and the mafia. Top story starts right now. Good evening. We begin with the Trump administration's massive show of force, the largest Navy aircraft carrier on its way to the Caribbean in a major flex of U.S. military muscle. This is the USS Gerald Ford. It is the biggest of its kind in the U.S. fleet, currently deployed in the Mediterranean, but soon will be in the waters off of Latin America. Already in the region, the U.S. has about 6,000 sailors and Marines, 8 surface ships, and a nuclear-powered sub. The Ford Carrier Strike Group would add as many as 5,000 sailors and Marines to that mission, along with 9 air wing squadrons and 5 destroyers. The announcement from the Pentagon comes after Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth released video of the 10th U.S. strike in the region on an alleged drug trafficking boat. Since September, U.S. strikes in the Caribbean and in the Pacific have killed 43 people. The Trump administration says they are terrorists trafficking drugs, but at this time, there is no independent confirmation of this information. The series of U.S. strikes combined with the unprecedented show of force now begging the question, what is President Trump's goal in the region? Our senior national security correspondent Courtney Cubie leads us off tonight.
Tonight, a major escalation in the Trump administration's war on drug cartels. The Pentagon announcing the USS Gerald R. Ford, the Navy's largest aircraft carrier, and as many as 5 destroyers and dozens of aircraft are heading to Latin America. This after a massive show of force yesterday. The U.S. flying 2 B-1 bombers towards Venezuela, turning around just 50 miles off the coast, according to a defense official and flight data. And separately striking another alleged drug boat overnight, the administration saying they killed 6 Tren de Aragua cartel members smuggling drugs to the U.S. It's the 10th boat struck so far. The administration saying 43 people have been killed during the strikes, releasing videos but not providing additional evidence. President Trump saying the strikes save American lives when he was pressed if he would ask Congress for a declaration of war.
I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay, we're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead.
Many of the strikes happening off the coast of Venezuela. The Trump administration considers its authoritarian leader, Nicolas Maduro, as illegitimate and a narco-terrorist. Maduro announcing he's deployed 5,000 Russian-made missiles and thousands of troops along his coast.
No crazy war, no crazy war.
All as President Trump has suggested potential land strikes against cartels, saying he'll notify Congress first. But some U.S. lawmakers have questioned if the strikes are legal.
Courtney joins us tonight from Washington. Courtney, do we know when these additional forces arrive?
So the Ford and at least 3 of the destroyers associated with the Carrier Strike Group are still in the Mediterranean. So we shouldn't expect them to be on station completely and ready to go for at least a week, maybe a little more, depending on exactly when they leave the Med. But what's really critical here, Tom, is once they arrive, all of that additional firepower, it's nearly doubling what is already in the region right now, which really goes to the question that you asked at the top of the broadcast, and that is exactly why is the Trump administration putting so many people, thousands of U.S. sailors and Marines, aircraft, at least 8 ships are already there in addition to a nuclear-powered submarine. Officials telling us that they are working towards, at this point, trying to pressure Nicolas Maduro, the head of Venezuela, the president of Venezuela, to make a mistake that could ultimately lead to him stepping down without the United States ever having to put any boots on the ground in Venezuela. That being said, Tom, the president is still not ruling out the possibility of strikes on land in Venezuela.
All right, Courtney Kube there leading us off with a lot of new reporting. Courtney, we thank you. For more on the escalation in Latin America, I want to bring in Colonel Steve Warren. He's a former senior military advisor and spokesperson at the Pentagon. Colonel, thanks so much for joining Top Story tonight. This is a stunning show of force, which begs the question, do you really think this is about a war on?
Well, Tom, thanks for this. If it's a war on drugs, I'm not sure that we've got the proportions right. This is a $13 billion warship. It's, many would argue, the most powerful warship on planet Earth. It seems like a lot just for plinking some speedboats that are carrying drugs. So that leads to the question that you asked, what's it really for? Well, we don't know yet. The president and the White House and the Pentagon haven't told us. But what we can assume is that strikes on land are what's next. What comes beyond that, we don't know yet.
Explain that to our viewers. Why would strikes on land, why would you need, I guess I should ask, why would you need the carrier for strikes on land, or is it those other assets?
Well, the strikes, the carrier brings this tremendous capability of being able to position aircraft close enough to Venezuela that you don't need to execute these really complex long-range operations like we saw in Iran. So aircraft carriers were designed, frankly, as you know, floating airports in World War II, and that's what they do best. Positioning an aircraft carrier off the coast of a nation that we intend to strike allows us to cycle sorties to and from the land almost continuously if need be.
Yeah. Do you think the president needs congressional approval for some of these operations?
Well, many would say he does. You know, the president has outlined that he's declared these drug cartels to be terrorist organizations and is using the same authorities that have been in place since 9/11 to strike these new terrorist organizations. Most analysts, most legal experts feel that that's probably a little too far. We've even seen some Republicans on the Hill indicate that they'd like to know more. What's the strategy? What's the end state? What are we trying to accomplish for America?
Yeah, by moving the USS Gerald Ford out of position of where it was, does it leave us vulnerable in that region of the world?
Well, there's only so many aircraft carriers, and so anytime one moves from one place, it's not somewhere else. This is a zero-sum game. So it reduces our presence in the Middle East. It reduces our capabilities in the Middle East while increasing our capabilities, in South America. So yes, it is an obvious reduction and obvious to our foes that we have a little bit less force there in the Middle East.
Yeah, when you look at the map there and you look at some of these countries, right, you have this issue with Venezuela, and they have an aging military. They don't have the technology. They're a poor country. You have Colombia that is sort of getting into a war of words with President Trump. He's now sanctioned them. You have Cuba that relies on Venezuela for oil and for other assets as well. Do you think he's sort of broadening out what's happening there in the region? He wants to make this a bigger issue than just with Venezuela?
Well, so he certainly may. I mean, none of these countries are a match for U.S. War-making capability. They're not even a close match. So what I think what we're seeing is pressure being applied. The president has made clear that he doesn't want Maduro to remain in power. Whether or not the pressure that he's applying will cause some internal friction that will end up with Maduro deposed remains to be seen. But I think that's really what's at the bottom of all of this. And then ultimately, I think the second piece that the president thinks about is, it's in his interest, it's in the president's interest to demonstrate that he's willing to use force anywhere in the world.
Colonel Steve Warren, we thank you for your service, and we thank you for your time tonight here on Top Story.
Thanks, Tom.
Now to the hurricane threat with potentially catastrophic impacts. Tropical storm Melissa expected to quickly strengthen into a major hurricane this weekend and make a direct hit on Jamaica. Cuba already beginning to feel the storm's wrath. This video showing heavy downpours there, turning roads into mud-filled rivers. I was just looking where that was. Actually, I think that's where my dad was from. Banas, Cuba. That's what happened. now Jamaica bracing for what could be a devastating and historic event as the system is expected to sit there for days. We have NBC's George Solis on the ground in Jamaica tonight and meteorologist Bill Karen standing by to break down the storm's path. George, I want to start with you in Jamaica. This could be a slow-motion disaster for the people there. First of all, what are you hearing, and do they realize sort of the danger that Jamaica is under right now? Anything can happen with a hurricane, right? But if this sucker sits over Jamaica for 3 or 4 days, it's going to be devastating.
Yeah, it's absolutely right, Tom. Officials here and locals, for that matter, bracing for a marathon, not a sprint. The uncertainty of all of this is really what's scary. The last real hurricane test this island has had was Hurricane Beryl a year ago. And keep in mind, that was not a direct hit. If some of the forecasts stay as they are, and this is a Category 4 or 5 that hits this island, it could be a completely different ballgame. To that end, we've seen hotels here already putting some sandbags, residents getting supplies. We stopped by one local grocery store today, and you could not find a single piece of bread. So again, officials taking this very seriously, locals taking this very, very seriously. We actually stopped by one community that historically floods, the Old Capital, Port Royal, where residents actually don't tend to leave. And again, for right now, many of them saying, look, we plan to ride this out. But again, just given what's at stake here, officials saying, look, we really don't want anyone to play any games with this storm. We need you to evacuate when we say evacuate. To that end, once a hurricane watch is issued here, those airports are going to close within 24 hours. So the options are going to grow limited by the hour. This, not to use a cliche, Tom, has been the calm before the storm. It was actually beautiful a few hours ago before some of the rain started to hit. But again, as this gets into the weekend, we expect conditions to quickly deteriorate here, and things could be looking a lot scarier in the weekend ahead.
George, before you go, do people realize that if the storm does hit and it's a Category 4, and like we said, it sits over for 2 or 3 days, that it could be weeks before resources come in to Jamaica? Things will be cut off?
Yeah, it's absolutely a major concern here. And one thing that I pressed officials on here about that, after Hurricane Beryl, they said they learned a few things. They wanted to make sure that they have adequate resources here on the ground. They have generators. They have teams ready to be deployed. But again, given that there is so much uncertainty here and they don't know what the level of devastation could be, even everything that they have planned up to this point could be moot if this thing persists and sits over Jamaica over several days.
All right, George Solis, we thank you for that. Bill, walk our viewers through what we can expect here. The track of this storm is quickly to explode into a monster Cat 4 or even stronger.
Yeah, we know it's over extremely warm water, and that's going to be the high-octane fuel. Now that it's getting its act together, there's nothing really to stop it. I mean, it's just a matter of what land it's going to hit and how devastating it'll be. And right now, all eyes are on Jamaica and, for the heavy rain, the southwest portion of Haiti, this peninsula right in here. So the storms, you can see all the bright reds. These are the clouds. These are the tops of the thunderstorms, the higher, the cloud tops that we colorize them just to show you where the most intense portion of the storm is. Eventually, this will have an eye on it, but probably not until we get to maybe Sunday or Monday. So this is why everyone is watching and staring at Jamaica. When the Hurricane Center says that a strong Category 4, 155-mile-per-hour winds is going to slowly approach Jamaica and then cross the island. The island's only 50 miles wide. It would be about a 12 to 18-hour adventure, and then it's about 150 miles from east to west. So it's about the same size, similar to Puerto Rico. If you remember what Maria did to Puerto Rico, people didn't have power for 2 to 3 weeks. That would be what would happen if this occurs. So now the question is, how certain are we it's going to happen like that? And then, of course, we don't want to forget about Cuba, because after the storm exits Jamaica, it may only weaken one category or so. This would still be a devastating blow to all the eastern half of portions of a very mountainous area there in Cuba. So the rainfall forecast is locked in. This will not change. Up to 3 feet here possible in areas of Haiti, 15 to 25 inches, 1 to 2 feet over Jamaica. The Cuba forecast will go up a little bit, but that's not likely till Tuesday night or Wednesday. So we still have a lot of time to kind of pinpoint where in Cuba the worst of it's going to be. Notice all of our lines are kind of locking in, no longer over Haiti, somewhere over Jamaica, heading up towards Cuba, Tom. So, this storm.
Bill, before you go, I do want to ask you, there's not a lot of room there, right? There's nowhere for this thing to just sort of veer left or right. How much do you think the track changes, if any at all?
I think best case scenario now, since we know it's going to be a monster storm, would somehow sneak between Jamaica and Cuba so the core winds don't hit and then pass up here between Cuba and Haiti. But, I mean, the odds of that are very slim. I mean, I know a lot of people are also wondering about the East Coast, Tom. Just to update people on that, it still looks like this heads off the East Coast and does not hit anywhere in the U.S. But a storm in the Caribbean like this, it's very slim chances that we don't get somewhere devastating.
Surrounded by land right now. Okay, Bill, we thank you for that. Now to that deadly crane collapse in Massachusetts. 2 people killed and officials now trying to figure out what caused the crane to topple. Stephanie Gosk has the late details.
A terrifying and chaotic scene in Everett, Massachusetts today, just north of Boston. A crane crumbling across a barge and smashing into the water at an ongoing construction site.
Right now, we do have 1 confirmed deceased. We have another party that was transported to the hospital.
The mayor later saying the person rushed to the hospital also died. Early on, the fire chief calling it an active search and rescue operation, complicated because of the industrial equipment on the pier. Officials were concerned at first the casualties could rise.
We're just praying that, that everyone's okay.
The area along the Mystic River is undergoing renovations, according to Everett's mayor.
They're dismantling the port area here, or the former Exxon site, where the tankers used to come in and offload.
The work coming to a halt. Police say they have contacted OSHA, the Workplace Safety Agency. Tonight, the death toll remains at 2. Officials saying they were young men in their 30s or 40s, while investigators work to determine the cause of the deadly collapse. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
All right, now to President Trump's showdown with Canada. The president says trade negotiations are off after the government of Ontario released an ad featuring former President Ronald Reagan criticizing tariffs. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell is at the White House with the latest.
When someone says tonight, Canada pulled the plug on a TV commercial that infuriated President Trump, prompting him to abruptly cut off trade talks. The ad uses the words of the late President Reagan to make a case against U.S.-imposed tariffs.
America's jobs and growth are at stake.
The ad, paid for by the province of Ontario, set off Mr. Trump on social media, calling the ad fake, with Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs.
Such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer.
The Reagan Presidential Foundation said the ad misrepresents the 1987 address on trade and said it should be watched in full. This dust-up is another skirmish in a trade war with Canada. Today, Canada's Prime Minister sidestepped the ad fury, but says he wants to keep negotiating.
When the Americans are ready to have those discussions.
The trade drama comes as Wall Street soared, with the Dow closing above 47,000 for the first time, with the S&P and NASDAQ up as well, driven in part by data that shows inflation rose less than expected.
All right, Kelly O'Donnell joins us tonight from the White House. Kelly, trade's also going to be a topic of discussion when the president lands in Malaysia for a critical summit this weekend. What can we expect from that visit?
Well, Tom, he departs late tonight for what will be a 3-country visit in Asia. He'll be in Malaysia, he'll be in Japan and South Korea. And the focus will be on trade. And that part of the world has certainly felt the tension between the United States and their countries over trade. The president has imposed big trade tariffs, and there's been some retaliation. Now, with China, that will be the centerpiece of this trip. A meeting with President Xi Jinping, that's expected at the end of the 3-country tour, and the hope, according to the White House, is to resolve some of these differences, to have some kind of trade agreement as a deliverable outcome of the president's tour. Again, it's been sensitive, huge competitive issues with China, and also they have been putting some export controls on minerals and products that are important to the United States. That has amped up some of the tension. Tom?
Okay, Kelly O'Donnell at the White House tonight for us. Kelly, thank you. Also, the New York Attorney General Letitia James pleading not guilty in her federal bank fraud case. The indictment is related to a mortgage she took out on a property in Virginia and alleges James's actions saved her, when you do the math, about $50 a month over the course of a 30-year mortgage. James, a fierce critic of President Trump, appeared outside the courthouse today, defiant, saying the justice system has been weaponized. When we come back, the terrifying moment after an immigration protest, officers firing at a U-Haul truck after it reversed towards them. What happened? Plus, another massive recall for Tesla, this one over the lights on its Cybertruck. Are the vehicles safe on the road? And the latest on that sprawling gambling bust involving NBA stars and the mafia. The new warning from the NFL to its players. Stay with us. We are back now with a shocking moment. Officers opened fire on a U-Haul near a Coast Guard base as it reversed towards them following protests in the area. This is just one of several instances of violence across the country as anger bubbles over President Trump's immigration crackdown. NBC's Morgan Chesky reports.
A frightening scene following protests near Oakland. Video from Thursday night showing officers firing at a U-Haul truck as it sped in reverse towards them. All playing out near a Coast Guard base. Witnesses diving for cover.
There's a U-Haul truck that was attempting to ram them. They shot up the party.
They stacked up, they drew, they threatened to shoot him if he went any further. He burned rubber right back at him.
Federal authorities say the driver was struck in the stomach and will undergo a mental health evaluation. One bystander also wounded. I got hit! I got hit! But later treated and released. DHS saying when the vehicle posed a direct threat, law enforcement officers discharged several rounds of defensive live fire. The incident following hours of protests there. It comes as President Trump called off deploying federal troops in nearby San Francisco. This as ICE operations are ending in dangerous confrontations nationwide. In Virginia, DHS says one man was killed as he tried to run away from ICE agents when he was struck by a car on the interstate. And this week in San Diego, 3 ICE agents were injured. Federal officials telling our station KNSD a man drove into them before being arrested. Today at that Coast Guard base, authorities increasing security as protesters returned and tensions remain high. Following a violent night. Morgan Chesky, NBC News.
Morgan Chesky joins us live now. Morgan, this comes as legal efforts are ongoing, challenging National Guard deployments in other cities in America. Where does that stand now?
Yeah, Tom, we are seeing this carried out coast to coast, these legal challenges, essentially asserting that the president does not have the power to have these out-of-state National Guard troops or in some cases federal agents in these particular cities. And we've seen progress on multiple fronts. In fact, just today in Washington, D.C., an attorney arguing on behalf of the Trump administration was trying to defend their right to keep National Guard troops there, whereas city leaders there are saying they are doing more harm than good. That is an ongoing legal dispute. We know the Supreme Court will be looking at whether or not National Guard troops can be in Chicago. Meanwhile, we're hearing from a federal judge in Oregon today, Tom, saying that they'll be making a decision on whether or not those out-of-state troops can be in that state come Monday. So very much evolving day by day here. Tom?
All right, Morgan Chesky. Tesla tonight recalling more than 60,000 of its Cybertrucks over concerns that glare from the parking lights could lead to an increased risk of crashes. Bright headlights have been a growing concern for drivers all across the country. NBC's Vicki Nguyen has this look at why newer lights appear so much brighter on the roads.
Bro, they're putting stadium lights on trucks these days.
Tonight, Tesla issuing a recall for nearly all of its U.S. Cybertrucks over an issue drivers have been complaining about for years.
Those aren't even his high beams. Those are his normal lights, dude.
The U.S. Department of Transportation saying the Cybertruck's controller software may cause the front parking lights to be too bright and exceed the maximum light output, adversely affecting the vision of other drivers. While the DOT says the Cybertruck's glare could lead to an increased risk of crash, Tesla says it's not aware of any collisions, injuries, or fatalities related to the condition. The recall coming as drivers' calls for dimmer lights for all car models have grown louder in recent years.
Even when I'm walking in the city, the parked cars with their lights on feel like a flashlight in my face.
I can barely see anything.
The Institute for Highway Safety studied nighttime crashes across 11 states and found glare-related crashes haven't increased. Adding, although it can certainly be uncomfortable, headlight glare contributes to far fewer crashes than insufficient visibility. But 39 states don't include glare as a reporting option on state crash report forms, according to the Auto Safety Center. And some drivers online say they feel the risk is higher with the newer LED lights.
That should not be legal. That doesn't need to be on the road with me.
We got a crash course from John Bulla in 2023. He studies lighting for the Mount Sinai School of Medicine's Light and Health Research Center. He says older headlights use halogen bulbs, which have a softer orange color, but newer ones are bluish white.
You're creating a lot of glare for those other drivers.
And a potentially dangerous situation.
That's right.
Bulla showed us the difference firsthand with an older halogen headlamp and a newer LED, both emitting the same amount of light.
I'm going to look at the warm light just to kind of get a sense. Okay, yeah, it's bright. Let me see what the LED light does. Oh, this one for sure. Much, much brighter. It hurts my eyes, and actually, I'm still seeing the spots from it. Why is it that they appear brighter?
Well, our eyes are more sensitive to blue light.
He says the issue is magnified when a headlight is out of alignment, a common problem. Bulla shifts an LED headlight out of alignment by just a few degrees to show me what can happen on the road.
Wow, so the LEDs are already quite bright, but when they're tilted up, you can't see anything else. This would be very dangerous if I were driving.
He says another contributing factor, large trucks and SUVs. Taller vehicles mean headlights are higher and more likely to shine directly into the eyes of a driver in a smaller, lower vehicle. We reached out to Tesla and have not heard back.
And Tom, this recall affects 63,000 Cybertrucks that were made between 2023 and 2025. Fortunately, Tesla says the fix is pretty simple and it won't cost you anything. It is an over-the-air software update. They've already released it. You just need to make sure that if you have one of these impacted vehicles, that your software is up to date so you can download that fix. Tom, back to you.
Those were some bright lights. Okay, Vicki, we thank you. Coming up on Top Story, the dramatic new video of an explosion at a bus facility. What we're learning from investigators tonight about how this happened. Plus, many federal employees now missing paychecks as the government shutdown drags on. We went to a food bank to see the impact firsthand. Wait till you hear from these federal workers. But first, Top Story's top moment. You've all, of course, heard about that stunning jewelry heist at the Louvre. That sounded like it was straight out of an Ocean's 11 movie. Well, now, George Clooney himself weighing in on that operation, talking to Variety on a red carpet in L.A. Take a listen.
But you gotta somehow incorporate those Louvre guys in there. I mean, because that's what everyone's gonna be thinking about. Like, Danny Ocean has to.
I wonder if they're gonna catch these guys. I mean, they seem to have done a pretty good job of getting away with it.
7 minutes.
I know. I watched the film of them coming down the.
And you said you should be in the bucket. You should be
in the bucket. Yeah, it was cool though. I mean, yeah, cool. I mean, it's terrible, but
I mean,
if you're a professional thief like I am,
right.
I was very proud of those guys.
George Clooney also confirming to Variety that the script for the next Ocean's movie, it's already written and it will have to live up to this real-life heist. Wow, that's good. Stay with us. More news on the way. We're back down with a critical juncture tonight in the government shutdown. Many federal employees now missing their first full paycheck. The list includes workers from the NIH, HHS, the VA, civilians in the Department of Defense, food inspectors at the USDA, and TSA officers. The Department of Transportation says about half of all ground stops and flight delays this weekend are shutdown related, as some air traffic controllers call out sick and protest or take on second jobs to feed their families. At airports like Las Vegas and Miami, food pantries have opened assistance for controllers and TSA officers working without pay. And similar scenes are playing out across the country, including in Washington, where NBC's Melanie Zanona spoke to furloughed workers at a food bank where they're now getting critical aid.
In Southeast D.C., this food bank line just for federal workers.
You have to have your government ID.
Stretches around the block. Many furloughed federal employees like Anthony Spite now waiting hours for help.
I have children to feed, I have a family to take care of, I have a mortgage to pay, so it's a lot of uncertainty.
The Bipartisan Policy Center reports 1.4 million civilian federal employees like Spite did not get paid today.
I never thought that I would be in this predicament where I'm in need of assistance. Thank you.
Under a 2019 law, federal workers will be reimbursed at the end of the government shutdown. But that help could still be a long way away, with Congress not in session.
How does it make you feel that members of Congress are still getting a paycheck right now?
You know, if we're not getting paid, I honestly feel that their checks should be withheld as well.
And as food banks face an influx of federal workers,
it's scary.
The clock is ticking for millions more.
With the shutdown, I believe that we'll get double the amount, maybe even triple the amount that we see now.
Federal funding for food programs like SNAP and WIC in danger of running dry by the end of the month.
To last all the way for the next month, even to cover December, it won't. We will be starving.
Our NBC affiliate in Kansas City breaks down what that assistance looks like for the 41 million Americans who rely on the program.
I'm Megan Abundis, grocery shopping in South Kansas City. This cart full of staples, some fresh produce, fresh fruit, some meat, and bread represents what the average person on SNAP benefits or food stamps can afford for an entire week. The national average benefit for a breakdown per person per week is about $46 to $74. That's what we've spent here, $48.68 for this cart full of groceries.
How you doing, ma'am? You can choose one item.
With no end to the shutdown in sight, many now preparing for what could be a long road ahead.
What can I do about it? But just keep pushing forward. As they say, push until something happens.
The food bank that we went to today had over 200 people show up, all of them federal workers or government contractors. And the organizers who we spoke to said they're prepared to hold these types of weekly donation events as long as the government shutdown continues. Tom.
All right, Melanie Zanona for us. Melanie, we thank you for that one. Next tonight, to an update on that deadly crash in Ontario, California. The driver accused of causing that deadly 8-car pileup appearing in court today, facing 3 counts of vehicular manslaughter. And we're learning tonight that DHS says the driver was in the U.S. illegally. Steve Patterson has the latest.
Tonight, the Department of Homeland Security posting disturbing video of a semi-truck as it slammed into multiple vehicles on a California highway. Authorities say the man behind the wheel, 21-year-old Jashanpreet Singh, pleaded not guilty today to vehicular manslaughter while driving under the influence. Police say his big rig slammed into traffic at high speed, sparking an 8-car chain reaction crash, killing 3 people. Among the victims, a Pomona High School basketball coach and his wife. Homeland Security officials say Singh was in the U.S. illegally, crossing the southern border in 2022 and released into the country by the Biden administration, though the California DMV says they were told he had legal status. And it follows another deadly crash in Florida, where authorities say this big rig made a reckless U-turn, causing a collision with a van. 3 people were killed. Driver Harjinder Singh was also in the U.S. illegally, according to DHS, and faces 3 counts of vehicular homicide. He's pleaded not guilty. The Florida Attorney General says Singh failed his driving test 10 times in 2 months, but eventually got a California commercial driver's license. Florida officials say he could only answer 2 of 12 verbal questions correctly. The Trump administration now investigating.
If you can't understand English, you can't understand road signs, how in the heck can you ever pass a test to be issued a commercial driver's license? You can't do it but for fraud.
Steve Patterson joins us tonight from L.A. Steve, a lot of our viewers will wonder about this. You can get a commercial driver's license, not a regular one, a commercial driver's license to essentially work if you aren't a U.S. citizen?
Yeah, Tom, under very strict new federal guidelines, spurred by some of these examples of these crashes, it is now extremely difficult to obtain as a non-citizen. And part of the reason why Duffy there says he's investigating possible fraud cases. Meanwhile, Florida is now asking the Supreme Court to stop specifically California and Washington state from issuing commercial licenses to people who may be in the U.S. illegally. Tom?
Okay. Steve, we thank you for that. Now to Top Stories newsfeed. We start in El Paso with new surveillance video of a deadly explosion at a bus facility. This is wild. You can see the bus raised up on a lift before tipping over and exploding multiple times. The blast killed at least 2 people and hurt 11 others. This incident happened back in February. Officials say a natural gas cylinder broke after the lift fell over, sparking that massive fire. And a scary scene today on one of America's most iconic bridges. Look at this, a car bursting into flames on the Brooklyn Bridge. Video shows smoke billowing from the car. The incident shut down traffic for a while in both directions, but luckily officials say nobody was hurt. Also here in New York, a dramatic moment on the subway. Police jumping into action. This little dog that was hiding underneath the train. Officers eventually got him back onto the platform safe and sound. We're told his name is Moose and that he's now back with his owner. All right, that's good news. And the World Series is finally here with the Toronto Blue Jays hosting the LA Dodgers for Game 1 tonight. The Blue Jays looking to capture their first ever title in more than 30 years, but to do so, they'll have to upset the red-hot Dodgers, hoping to become the first team in a quarter century to win back-to-back championships, and they are looking good. Next tonight, the new warning from a professional sports league in light of that gambling scandal we told you about last night involving the NBA. The NFL sending a memo to all team executives and personnel urging them to remind players about the league's gambling policy. It comes as we learn more about dozens of people, including current and former NBA players and coaches accused in those sweeping investigations into sports betting and alleged poker scheme. NBC's Sam Brock joins us now in studio. And Sam, what are you learning about this reaction from the NFL?
So I think it's fair to say the NBA is not exactly the only sport, Tom, where you have lots of players that have access to sensitive information, prop bets around the sport, where gamblers are wagering on the performance of individual players. So knowing that, the NFL trying to get out in front of what we are seeing unfold with the NBA right now, sending a letter that was obtained by Pro Football Talk to all of the NFL teams and their ownership and personnel saying you might as well review our gambling policy. We're going to pull up some of the specifics for you right now, but this is the wording on this. These developments underscore the risks that all sports are facing right now in the current environment and serve as a reminder of the need to adhere strictly to the NFL gambling policy. This first part, Tom, I think probably is common sense for most folks. NFL players are expressly prohibited from placing any wager on NFL games. Such conduct will also likely subject players to criminal prosecution. Here's the key here, though. Players cannot share confidential, non-public information. You see these two indictments come out, and of course, the more sensational one is what we were talking about last night, which is the mafia-related illegal poker ring, right? Yeah. But the NBA and professional sports are far more concerned about people, and players specifically, that are manipulating performance or sharing information for games that are being bet on for hundreds of thousands of dollars. That changes all of our perception of the integrity and the authenticity of those sporting events. That's the biggest concern for them tonight.
So, are there new details in that NBA investigation?
Couple of new details. So first of all, this picture with Chauncey Billups, right? He actually, turns out, is implicated in both of these indictments. This picture that was obtained by NBC News dates back to May of 2019. We learned from investigators 2019 is about when this started. The woman there in the center of the picture is, according to the indictment, the organizer of this particular event. Her name is Pookie. Now, this is a high-end New York City hotel. We are told that apparently you had to get a referral just to get there. There are cocktail waitresses offering massages and drinks, what you get inside. But what you see there is Chauncey Billups in this 2019 photo with a stack of chips in front of him and another defendant in the indictment. There's that. But Chauncey Billups, and this is really important, okay, he is a current sitting head coach. He is implicated in the other indictment, it appears. They talk about co-conspirator number 8. Co-conspirator number 8 was someone who played basketball from 1997 to 2014. That's the exact span of his career. Has been a coach in the NBA since, that should read 2021, which is when he started with the Trailblazers, and is an Oregon resident. The indictment says that the individual that matches that description is accused of telling another defendant in the case that the Portland Trailblazers would be tanking the game, that key players would be sitting out, and as a result of that information, according to the indictment, a big bet was placed on a game where the Trailblazers ultimately lost. Wow. This, again, strikes at the very heart of what's
that's
considered
going to be wild if they connect
competition.
those dots, Sam. That's crazy. That's a huge development. Okay. All right, Sam Brock, always great to see you, man. Still ahead tonight, top story, an inside look at how NATO is preparing to fight a nuclear war. Our Raf Sanchez got exclusive access to the military drills. We'll show you what he saw next. We're back now, and for the very first time, we're getting a glimpse at NATO's preparations to fight a nuclear war. European fighter jets simulating what it would look like to drop American nuclear bombs in anticipation of a worst-case scenario. Our Raf Sanchez was on site for those drills.
This is what training for nuclear war looks like. We're at the Vocal Air Base in the Netherlands, where we've been given exclusive access, as NATO for the first time allows reporters to see its nuclear war games. These European fighter jets are simulating carrying out a nuclear strike using American bombs.
NATO is a nuclear alliance.
Colonel David Bunch is the head of NATO's nuclear operations.
We're ultimately preparing for what would be the worst day.
The decision to use a U.S. nuclear weapon always lies with the president.
But in an extreme scenario like all-out war with Russia, the president could allow American nuclear weapons to be loaded onto an allied aircraft like this.
Dutch F-35s taking part in the exercise.
What message do you want Russia and other adversaries to take from this exercise?
That we're ready every day to defend every inch of this territory.
NATO says the annual exercise is meant to deter all enemies and is not aimed at Russia. But the Kremlin calling it a provocation. President Vladimir Putin responding this week, overseeing nuclear drills of his own. Under Dutch military rules, this pilot can only be identified as Lieutenant Colonel B. But should the worst day come, it would be his squadron called on to drop the bombs.
Does it weigh heavily on you?
Yes, it does, obviously, yeah. This is the highest form of violence we could use to be able to deter our adversaries.
And the last remaining nuclear arms agreement between the U.S. and Russia expires early next year. If it isn't renewed, there'll be no limit on the number of nuclear weapons both sides can deploy. Tom?
Raf Sanchez, our thanks to you. Back here at home, an incredible story of survival out of Minneapolis. 12-year-old Sophia released from the hospital nearly 2 months after she was shot and injured in that Catholic school shooting at Annunciation Church. Her friends and family and doctors welcoming her with open arms. Watch as medical staff cheer on 7th grader Sophia Forkis. Discharged nearly 2 months after the August 27th mass shooting at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis that took the lives of 2 young students, 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel and 10-year-old Harper Moisky. 18 children were injured, among them Sophia, who had a bullet lodged in the side of her head. Last month, Sophia's neurosurgeon leaning on prayer.
If you had told me at this juncture 10 days later that we'd be standing here with any ray of hope, I would have said it would take a miracle.
Her father, Tom, fighting back tears.
Sophia is strong. Sophia is fighting. And Sophia is going to win this fight.
Sophia's story of survival would become an anthem for hope. Sophia Strong. Here's the moment yesterday she arrived at Annunciation Catholic School, swarmed by her friends and classmates. And back at the hospital, cheers as Sophia emerged. Among the first in line, the very neurosurgeon that saved her life. Happy birthday to you. Then, everyone singing to Sophia just in time for her 13th birthday. That does it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching Top Story. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way. We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.